Ukraine unleashed a wave of drone strikes deep inside Russian territory. This stunning display targeted key infrastructure, sending shockwaves through Moscow. The attacks signal a dramatic escalation in the conflict. Videos showed plumes of smoke billowing from sites in Moscow and Tver. These images brought the reality of war to Russia's doorstep. Ukraine has demonstrated its ability to strike at the heart of its adversary. This operation marks a turning point in the war. The drone strikes were not random acts of aggression. They were carefully calculated to disrupt and demoralize. Moscow, the symbol of Russian power, found itself directly in the crosshairs. While officials downplayed the impact, the attacks sent a clear message. Nowhere in Russia is safe. In Tver, a fire erupted at a power station, highlighting the vulnerability of critical infrastructure. While authorities managed to contain the blaze, the incident exposed the potential for widespread disruption to essential services. The attacks have undoubtedly shaken the Russian public, shattering any sense of normalcy. The psychological impact of these attacks cannot be overstated. For the first time, ordinary Russians are experiencing the fear and uncertainty that Ukrainians have endured for over a year. The Kremlin's narrative of a swift and decisive victory now rings hollow. The attacks on Moscow and Tver serve as a stark reminder that this war has far-reaching consequences. The world holds its breath, waiting to see how Russia will respond to this unprecedented challenge to its authority. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, once a comedian thrust onto the world stage by tragedy, offered a defiant justification for the strikes. He argued that Ukraine has the right to defend itself, to hit back at the aggressor that has rained down terror on its cities and people. Zelensky framed the drone attacks as a direct response to Russia's relentless targeting of Ukrainian infrastructure and civilians. He reminded the world of the brutal missile and drone attacks that have become a grim daily reality for Ukrainians. Some international observers have expressed concern that these strikes could provoke a dangerous escalation. However, Zelensky remains steadfast in his conviction that Ukraine is acting within its rights, taking the fight to the enemy that has shown no mercy. The world is now faced with a moral and strategic dilemma. Is Ukraine justified in taking the fight to Russian soil? And what will be the consequences of this bold new strategy? Section 4. Russia retaliates. A familiar pattern of violence continues. As expected, Russia responded to the drone attacks with fury. The Kremlin condemned the strikes as terrorist acts and vowed to retaliate swiftly and decisively. The language was chillingly familiar, echoing the rhetoric that preceded the invasion. True to its word, Russia unleashed a wave of airstrikes on Kharkiv, a city that has already endured months of relentless bombardment. The attacks targeted civilian areas, including a supermarket and a sports complex, injuring dozens, including innocent children. The strikes on Kharkiv serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. While the world debates the legality and strategic implications of drone strikes, innocent civilians continue to bear the brunt of the violence. The cycle of violence continues, each act of aggression fueling the next. The international community seems powerless to stop the bloodshed, caught in a web of condemnation and calls for restraint. Section 5. The world reacts. A divided international community grapples with the fallout. The international community's response to the drone attacks and subsequent Russian retaliation has been mixed. Some nations condemned the strikes on Russian soil, warning against further escalation. Others expressed understanding for Ukraine's position, acknowledging its right to defend itself. The attacks have exposed deep divisions within the international community. The United Nations has called for restraint and a return to dialogue. With trust shattered, the prospects for a negotiated settlement appear bleak. As the world grapples with the fallout, the conflict is far from over.